Welcome to the Observe Day podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. It's National Read a New Book Month, and today we're not just talking about reading a new book. We're diving into one that changes lives. Guest Amanda J. Scott is the author of Finding My Way Back to Me, a powerful memoir of reclaiming identity after 17 years in an abusive marriage. Her story isn't just about survival, it's about transformation, truth, and finding your voice when silence seems safer. Amanda now helps others who have experienced domestic, emotional, and financial abuse view their confidence and discover the freedom.
Welcome. Thank you, Wisdom. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me on your show today. Thank you.
Yeah.
And hello to all the listeners. Well, I experienced domestic abuse in a marriage for 17 years. Yet for the longest time, I didn't realize that what I lived with was abuse, because abuse takes on many forms and it's often hidden, whether it's emotional, financial, physical, or sexual abuse. It creates a feeling of shame in the abused that keep them stuck. Nobody wants to feel unloved and uncared for. So we make excuses for our partner's behavior rather than accept the truth that we are being abused. So I decided to share my lived experience to help shine more light on this issue, because my greatest hope is that my story can bring awareness and support to people that are still living in an abusive situation. Well, yeah, to be honest, I never set out to become a writer. It wasn't a dream I carried around in my pocket as a young child. It was something my lived experience urged from me. So after everything I'd been through, I thought, well, what good was it if I kept it to myself? You know, uh, it was about helping and sharing what I've learned to help other people go down that path, and hopefully with less stress and less heartache. So writing was not easy at all. It forced me to sit in moments that I had buried deep within. At times I wanted to stop because reliving it, reliving the past, it felt raw, and it was at times too heavy. But at the same time, as I wrote, every page was, as you said, a step to healing. I was finding my way back to life. So I truly believe is when we share, we break that silence. And yes, it is painful to write about, betrayal, self-abandonment, and abuse. But it is also liberating to write about rising and forgiving and loving yourself back alive. And that's what it was about for me. Yeah.
You spent 17 years in an abusive relationship. Part of that journey was hardest to write. Was it the pain, the recovery, or admitting what really happened?
Well, I think the first and the most powerful step a woman can take is to admit and acknowledge that she is in an abusive relationship. It might sound simple to someone on the outside, but when you are living in it, it's one of the hardest truths to face, because we make excuses. We tell ourselves it's not that bad, especially if there's no broken bones or, or scars to prove the pain. But abuse wears many masks, as I said before.
Yeah.
and it's not always loud and violent.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most painful is the silence, is the control, the manipulation, the constant walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
Because emotional and financial abuse erodes your soul over time. And in some cases, the invisible wounds can be the hardest to name and heal.
So, of all this
So
stage,
I think um, the hardest times were those painful, when you had to push yourself, you had to push your boundaries, your comfort zone. You were forced to make decisions. And that's why I talk about the 43 pivotal days it took me to change my life. And it did. It forced me to make decisions, and it pushed me to the limits, but it was worth it in the end. It was worth it. So those were the days when it was hard. Yes, it was hard. And it's very difficult when you have been living in an abusive relationship for so long and it has become your normal to suddenly realize, no, I've had enough.
yeah.
Yes, I am worthy of being treated with respect. And when you make that change, it's like other people around you think, oh, she's changed. She's not tolerating or putting up with this anymore. So it's hard. It's hard because everything changes around you, and some people don't understand um, that, yes, you're no longer the person that used to tolerate the disrespect, because you now are following your heart, and you know that kindness and respect is everything. Mm. And
Yeah. For
self-belief is. So yes, it does. It does push you to the limits,
talk
and they
about
were hard. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, well, the signs, yes. I mean, I think what happens, when I look back, it seems unreal that I would have actually accepted that day-to-day reality back then. I asked myself, why would I tolerate what I know now to be emotional and financial abuse? And the short answer to that is that abuse took control over my world. I no longer had a point of reference to be treated with dignity and respect. It had become my new normal. So it was normal to be yelled at. It was normal to be told I was stupid. It was normal never to be able to make decisions, you see. But yet, I think the deeper answer to that, why I tolerated it, is because I had grown to believe that I deserved to be treated that way. Because abuse, in my case, abuse grew slowly. And what started out as one incident of disrespect became two and three, until eventually it became the way I lived. I was told I was stupid, so it didn't take long before I believed that. And that meant that each time I was treated badly, it became my fault, because I thought if I was better, things would be better.
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observe Day newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation. You
So,
mentioned you
mm,
mentioned 43 days. I'm curious. Oh,
mm.
could you zoom in a little bit about on what happened within those 43 days of uh what did you call it again?
Well, the actual breakup took about 2 years to do that, but I'm picking the 43 days, the pivotal days that that were a turning point, you know,
Eh?
uh, that those were the pivotal days that, um, I started, to do the pivotal, the important things in those 2 years. Those 43 days were the pivotal ones where I made decisions, forced to change, do all those things that are necessary to eventually, to first of all say enough is enough. I mean, that's one of the first steps, isn't it?
Yeah.
To say, once you admit it, that's the most important thing, because that, by admitting it, it cracks open the door to freedom. And that is when you begin the journey back to you. And
Yeah.
you might not have all the answers, and you might not be ready to take the next steps, but by
Yeah.
simply admitting it, it opens that door to freedom. Yeah. So those 43 days, significant things happened, in that time.
Event.
Well, my journey to freedom started, I think, after a walk in the park. Um, Returning to the car, I found 12 missed calls, all from my husband. So I called. I was terrified. I thought something had happened, and I called, and he answered, "Where have you been? Why haven't you been answering your phone? You have a phone, pick it up. I've been waiting here for my lunch." Well, this conversation was the beginning of the end. I had been lied to, financially abused. Yeah. So it was the spark that I knew that something wasn't right. But the truth is, to all the listeners, that you do not need anybody else's permission to call it abuse. If it feels wrong, if you feel small, trapped, silenced, or constantly questioning your worth, that is enough. You don't have to wait for it to get worse. Your feelings are valid and your pain is real. I
Yeah.
think that's important. You know,
Okay.
uh, self-worth is everything to changing
Yeah.
your world. Yeah. The next turning point, I mean, I had a friend who gently pointed out that the way I wasn't being treated was, the way I was treated was being disrespected. I mean,
Yeah.
she noticed that things weren't normal, but what I had normalized weren't. So I think this is what happens. Little things like this spread a seed, and and they plant a seed that you just can't ignore. So there was quite a few things, and as I go through the book, you'll discover that there was quite a few things that uh, it's a slow realization. Yeah. That's what happens. That you discover that this is not love. This is not life. And at the end of the book, I go through the points that that help people. Wish I'd known as when I was going through that process. Things that are important to know. Yeah, it would say to me, that that finding my way back to me, I wrote it to show that even after abuse, even after losing yourself completely, there is a way back. And that way back begins the moment you say enough. Yeah.
How, like, could you like concretely describe? Because I know that over time, including when you left that abusive marriage, you wrote the book and you went through healing and all that. You've
Mm.
become a completely different person, even though you still bearing the same name, but you're a whole different woman, you're a whole different lady entirely. How would you describe the changes? Does that make sense? Who
Well, I
you are now
think,
versus.
because you lose yourself. You don't put your needs first. You don't look after yourself. You lose confidence completely Because this is what abuse does. An abusive relationship, control replaces respect. Instead of safety, you feel fear. So you're always walking on eggshells, waiting for the next incident or argument, and you just do things so you keep the peace. So that's why you abandon your own needs so that you can keep that peace. Instead of growing, you shrink, you second guess yourself, and you're walking on eggshells. So I think that's what happens. The situation it's nothing to do with my behavior, what I did or what I didn't do. It was simply because my husband was a deeply insecure man that needed absolute control. But because of my lack of self-worth, I chose to accept it rather than question it. So it was my lack of self-worth. So it's really about building that. And very difficult to build, inner peace and good health. They don't grow in an abusive soil.
Yeah.
They thrive in healthy, respectful love. But I think what happens is sometimes we forget what is a healthy relationship. Well, a healthy relationship, it's a place of safety, of love, of respect, of mutual growth. But when abuse is present, it strips away at those foundations and leaves you living in survival. And that's what I was living in, survival, not in love. So a healthy relationship, healthy relationships, there is freedom. You can speak your truth. You can set boundaries and still be loved. And you can make mistakes. And respect is not negotiable. It is the baseline. So I think we really need to find out, okay, so what is love? What is a healthy relationship? And it does exist. It does.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I think the most important thing is to acknowledge it. If it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't feel right, as I said before, it's like it doesn't have to be. For some women, there is no clear moment when it's not right. I mean, for some women, the turning point comes when the actual physical violence finally happens. But for others, it's just a glance in the mirror. It's a child's question. It's an empty bank account that actually sparks our realization that this is not life, this is not love. So I think it's really about really admitting, are you happy? Are you happy in your relationship? Can you speak your truth? Yeah. Are you walking on eggshells? Do you have self-care? Are you putting your your needs, making those a priority as well? Because it's important not always to be putting yourself last. It's important to have time to yourself, to have friends. Are you allowed friends? Because, often when I look back, friends, it wasn't good for me to have friends because it took away from the role of being a mother and a wife. So I think it's really important to see that it's important to have friends, to be able to talk to connect with, to get a different perspective on. And but also it is the biggest problem for me was the science of how I interpreted love. Because when I got married, I was convinced of one thing, that my husband loved me. When he called me 12 times a day to see where I was and what I was doing, back then in my mind, I thought that he loved and cared for me. When he was critical of my friends on the early times of the relationship, I believe that he was concerned for my well-being, because I had to believe it, because the thought of being unloved was unimaginable. So I think as my husband's behavior deteriorated, what I accepted was, I thought it was love and a protective nature, but it was just control and abuse. So it's about also, it's important to be able to have your own time as well. And you can set boundaries, as I say, and still be loved in a healthy relationship. So, yeah, I think it's, once you acknowledge it, that is the start. And accepting it, because once we acknowledge it and then accept it, then we're able to do something. And the first step to that really is self-care, because that's what we naturally do, because we decide, yes, we do matter. So I will go for a walk instead of walking back into chaos. Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
healing doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single decision. It's a daily commitment. But each
Wow.
time you choose yourself, when you speak up instead of, even though you might be trembling and your voice might be trembling at first, when you rest, when you cry, when you go for a walk in the park instead of returning to the chaos, you are reclaiming pieces of yourself.
And,
Well, they can, they can connect with me through my website, amandajscott.com, where I have, they can receive blog updates. And the book, Finding My Way Back to Me, is on, and is sold on that website on all platforms. And if there is any questions, any support that they want, or that they might want for a friend, please contact me personally, and I'll get back to you with any advice that I can help you to move through the process of it. Yeah. Healing from abuse, and
yeah. Thank you so
supporting
much.
women, yes, who've
Uh,
experienced it or are experiencing it at the moment. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Wisdom.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Wisdom, for having me on
Yeah.
your show.
I would add the link of in the description and the show notes, so listeners can click and go to the site. It's been an absolute delight chatting with you, and it's always good to
Lovely.
chat with a familiar face.
Thank you, Wisdom.
Yeah, I
Have a
stopped. That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life's special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.